from the underground bunker of the Civitas studio in Raleigh, North Carolina, it's Civitalk with your hosts Brooke Medina and Ray Nothstein. We're here to connect culture with civics, making it relevant to your daily life. And dare we say, existence at a time where too many are triggered and offended. So, relax, but buckle up and let's wade into the deep end. What's really happening in your old North State?
Welcome to another edition of Civitalk. It's Brooke Medina and I here. Brooke, are you surviving this flu apocalypse that's making its way through Raleigh right now?
Well, I have medicine running through my veins, I have throat lozenger in my mouth, and elderberry lining my refrigerator, elderberry syrup. So I'm in a way surviving, but in a way I am ever prepared and actually still recovering from a not so fun virus, but not the flu and not the coronavirus. What about you?
Yeah, my 2-year-old now has the flu, strand B. We all got flu shots, but it makes no difference for this strand of the flu. And anyways, I heard it wasn't a great year for flu shots anyways. It's gone down.
How do you ever know when it's going to be a good year?
Well, I don't think they do. I think they make guesses and predictions, and this is actually the worst year in 5 years for the flu shots. I do remember reading that. I think it was like 29% effective, and it has dropped by, I think, about 5% for the last 5 years.
Wow. Okay.
So maybe someone from the CDC could get more technical and dispute a few of those claims, but from general reading that I've seen, it's dropped about 5% in effectiveness from the last 5 years. And then, of course, you get some people that say, don't even get the flu shot, that it'll kill you early or do all this stuff to you.
Well, see, that's the thing. This whole flu shot drama, and I mean, as a parent, and not only just a parent, a homeschool parent, there is so much controversy around vaccines, and including the flu vaccine in the homeschool world, and just parenting in general, right? I mean, there's just so much.
Oh, yeah.
So much disagreement on that front.
I saw something in the news, too. I think it was one of those Yahoo stories. It was talking about one of the popular mommy bloggers just got busted for leaving her kids in the car in cold temperatures while she was shopping for hours in Home Depot.
In Home Depot?
I think so, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So mommy bloggers, beware out there.
Right.
And I'm glad the kids were okay. Of course, we joke about it. I think the kids were all okay and everything. But mommy bloggers, please, if you're going to blog about how you're a great mom, don't leave your kid in the car for hours.
Well, it probably depends on how older kids were.
They were like 2 and 3.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we're not talking teens or anything.
So I was about to say, I'll leave my 13-year-old and 16-year-old in the car.
Yeah, they don't want to come in and be seeing their mom.
No. They're like, Mom, just leave me here and let's tint our windows a little bit darker.
Right.
But yeah, so if you hear us coughing during this episode or sniffling, forgive us, but you get to join us in this journey of recovery and wellness as we are discussing very important news.
I'm still okay, but I feel like I will be getting sick this weekend with the 2-year-old with the flu, and so it'll just boomerang around the house. There's just no way around it.
Yeah, we all 6 of us in our house got sick, and it was tough. It was really, really tough. But
it's hard to see your own kids sick.
Yes.
You can kind of suck it up for yourself, but when it's your own kids,
when they're
it is
all
tough.
miserable,
yes,
and they're just so pitiful.
And mine aren't really old enough to understand, so it's even worse.
Right, yeah. And sometimes they can't communicate to you what's really bothering them. All they can do is whine, and you just feel so bad and helpless.
I do that a lot in my marriage anyway, so I'm just kidding.
Kelly puts up with so much.
I'm kidding.
My condolences, Kelly. No, but hey, we've got some interesting things to cover today, and why don't we go ahead and dig into this quality of life index and how amazing North Carolina is?
Yeah, I saw the News and Observer posted this on Twitter, the story, and according to, I'm pulling up the actual site here, the Numbeo site, that North Carolina has 2 cities and I don't know the formula, so I'm sure it's a certain size to qualify, but 2 cities are the top 10 in the world are in North Carolina for livability and just top cities to live in or dwell in. And so obviously those 2 cities, I think they're doing a size formula here, are Raleigh and Charlotte. Raleigh was number 3?
Number 2.
Number 2?
And this list of worldwide top cities to live in based on quality of life.
Wow.
North Carolina came in as number 2. Right before that was Canberra, Australia.
No. And my list says there's 2 places on Australia, in Adelaide, Australia, and then Raleigh's 3.
I'm looking at a different list then. I clicked on the Quality of Life Index by City 2020. But, and you looked at Quality of Life Index. So I'm looking at the 2021.
Oh, okay.
By
Gotcha.
city. So
Yep.
I'm
So
going
I'm
with
with
mine
you.
because Raleigh's even higher on that one.
Well, why not? I mean, we can do that.
But you know what, though? I'm not surprised by this. To be honest, I love living here in North Carolina. And
Yeah,
I've
North Carolina's
lived
a great state.
in multiple cities in North Carolina. We've lived in Asheboro, or right outside
I'm
of
sorry.
Asheboro. It was Randleman.
I'm kidding.
My husband became a country music listener at that point
Really?
in time, which was so funny because he's from Brooklyn and he's a
Right.
Puerto Rican and he's listening to country music and drinking sweet tea. It was wonderful. And we lived in Fayetteville for a very long time, and now Raleigh for about 5.5
Well, of
years.
course, Raleigh seems awesome. Coming from Fayetteville.
Don't talk about my city like that. No, but yeah, it's a great state to live in, but Raleigh's a really good city.
It
too.
is. It's fun. And Fayetteville, I actually like Fayetteville, going down there the few times that I've been
There's
down
a lot
there.
of
So I don't have a lot
nostalgia.
of the bad experiences maybe some people have. But
Oh, I have some survival stories.
yeah, I
in
bet.
Fayetteville.
But, Charlotte has a huge crime problem right now.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, there's been an uptick in murders in Charlotte, and it's pretty dramatic. And so I do know, looking at some website, and I can't name the site. I think it was a crime statistic website, that a lot of the new concealed carry permits are coming out of Mecklenburg County because of the upticks in murders
Yeah.
there.
Wow.
So
That's sobering and
yeah,
sad.
it's kind of sad.
And what do you think that's related to?
That's a good question. Donald asked me that, our CEO and president here at Civitas recently, and I didn't really have a ready answer. Because the economy obviously is pretty good in North Carolina. I don't think there's an influx of new people like you had, after Hurricane Katrina, where you saw crime skyrocketing in Houston and Baton Rouge, where cities were refugees from Katrina. I don't really know. I mean, I think that some people on the conservative side are blaming the police for not enforcing certain laws, not enforcing all the gun laws, or also kind of cherry picking who they're prosecuting and maybe not going after others. I don't know if that plays any role at all, but that was one article I saw. I just don't know enough about the dynamics of Charlotte, I think, to really properly answer that.
Yeah, but even so, it still made that list. So there's that.
So it's that, yeah. I mean, and there's things I do like about Charlotte. I haven't spent a lot of time there, but it's not my favorite city if I had to put it up against Raleigh one-on-one.
Yeah.
But the food is better in Charlotte. Raleigh, to me,
I don't know, Ray.
I think there's some better restaurants. If you're looking for like Southern cuisine, if you're looking probably for certain things, probably Charlotte's a little more cultured than Raleigh. Raleigh's made progress, but I think it's behind Asheville and Wilmington and Charlotte when it comes to culinary.
I think it doesn't have its own fingerprint
Maybe,
of food, I
Yeah.
would say. I mean, it's just kind of a conglomeration.
It is a hodgepodge, like a lot of the people that live. I mean, you got Midwesterners, you have Northeasterners, and you have the few native Raleigheites that are still left.
Yeah, it's definitely a melting pot or salad bowl, depending on how you look at it. But another list that Raleigh and Charlotte both did really well on was, I was reading Afrotech the other day, and Raleigh and Charlotte are part of their list of 6 cities where black techies are thriving. And so they were talking about this sort of exodus out of Silicon Valley for black entrepreneurs, and encouraged minorities to consider some other cities. Like Atlanta was the top of the list, but then came Raleigh, Durham,
Yeah.
Chapel Hill. And then third was Charlotte, and Huntsville, Alabama, Montgomery, Alabama, and Cincinnati, Ohio were also on that list. But I thought that was neat too, just because sometimes people will generalize the South and think that maybe it's not a place that is hospitable as the West or the North for minorities. And really, this is an area that that minorities are seeming to thrive in, and we are really a good cultural and ethnic melting pot, I think.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right when you use the term ethnic melting pot, because it really, I mean, North Carolina is really just eclectic and representation of the United States. And of course, Atlanta being top of that list doesn't surprise me, because they've had a strong black middle class. I mean, throughout even the dregs of segregation and Jim Crow laws. So that doesn't surprise me. It's good to see that North Carolina is rated very high for that, obviously.
Did you know that Durham was at one time called the Black Wall Street?
I think I had heard that years ago.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty neat too. I mean, so it used to be a big financial center for blacks in across the state and the nation. So I thought that was really neat. But anyways, North Carolina continues to be a good place to live. Our business climate is great. It was voted by Forbes as the top state
3
to
years
do
in a
business. So hooray for us. Good job, everybody.
Yeah, keep it up. It's a good time to live in North Carolina, obviously. I mean, it's been quite the turnaround since the Great Recession. And we've seen also just the policy. I mean, that's what we study here at Civitas and what we write about. Or go read our stuff at nccivitas.org. But we in North Carolina have had a dramatic turnaround since the Great Recession. And a large part of that has to do with our policies being competitive as a low-tax state that takes care of the fiscal budget and does not spend beyond our means like a lot of other states. When you go out and read the sort of pension nightmares going on in other states, North Carolina, while not perfect, has contrasts well with those other places.
Absolutely. We are in good shape on the whole, for sure. That's great. And speaking of being in shape, though, I have not been able to go to the gym for a solid week now because of being sick. But as I was recovering, I was laying in my bed a lot, watching the news, and I saw a lot about the coronavirus. Mm-hmm. And first off, it's just insane that the Chinese government let it get to this level. I was reading some commentary from someone who lives over there, and he's from the U.S., but he was just talking about how they kept it under wraps for so long, and they didn't actually address it early on when they could have done maybe some more meaningful prevention. And so now it's become this global problem. Mm-hmm. But what fascinated me is part of China's response has been to erect these huge hospitals within a matter of 48 hours, one of them. I thought that was amazing. It says on this one website I was reading in the Metro, it said that China opens 1,000 bed coronavirus hospital after just 48 hours of construction. Would you be afraid to walk into a building that had been constructed in 48 hours?
I don't think so, because I'm not sure that's something I would fear, because I lived in Egypt where there probably wasn't a lot of inspections of a lot of elevators and other buildings that I'd been in. So I don't think that would be my number one fear, having gone to China. Mine would be more like saying something and being arrested for it.
Fair.
Yeah. But having said that, I would probably at least think about it to some degree if I knew that had just been erected. And it is China. But, China, obviously, they have some really good engineers because so many of them study in the U.S.
That's a good point.
Yep.
But hopefully this coronavirus gets under control. I know lots and lots of people have been infected over there in China in that Wuhan province. And thankfully, though, I know we had a scare over here. There was some speculation that someone over here had caught it.
From another person. The first CDC reported today that there's been the first person-to-person contact
in Illinois, I think, right?
I think that's right.
But no, I had watched the news, and there was someone at, I guess, Duke or something that they were testing for it, but he tested clean and doesn't have it. But anyways, 'tis the season for viruses, and if you're going to have a virus, I guess name it after a beer.
It gives you an opportunity to wear a mask in public so you can do that Michael Jackson thing. I was a big Michael Jackson fan when I was little. So as an adult, this allows me to kind of tap into that, without wearing
those
the actual
masks are so
Thriller
ugly.
Jacket.
So ugly. I do not like those masks. But didn't somebody get denied a snack sample at Costco because
I did see. I didn't read the article, so I don't want to get Costco in trouble. I kind of skimmed it real briefly.
Don't attack my beloved Costco.
And I like Costco. I'm a member as well. And they don't give us any money, so that's not a public service announcement. But to my knowledge, at least.
But I'd be okay if they gave me money.
Yeah, but anyways, I did see that it looked like there was an Asian kid with a mask, and maybe one of the sample ladies refused to give him a sample and rushed him away from the table because yeah, they thought maybe he was a carrier.
No, his mama probably made him wear that just so he wouldn't get sick.
Yeah, who knows what was going on? The kid maybe had the flu or someone. I don't know, so I don't want to speculate too much.
Okay, I guess we won't talk about that. But how about Bernie Sanders?
This is very interesting to me because I kind of have a soft spot for Bernie Sanders. Certainly not his policies, but The one thing that I admire about him is he sometimes has a tendency, I'll say sometimes, has a tendency to be honest. We've talked about this on the podcast. He does say with his policies that the middle class will basically get a big tax increase and that they're going to have to pony up, some dough to enact all the things that he wants to enact, while Warren just comes along and says, it's only the 1%, or some of these other Democratic candidates say it's only the 1%. So one thing I'm looking forward to in this Democrat Civil War is, will Sanders be able to wait out the ambushes that are going to certainly come his way? Because I don't think, I know for sure the party structure, the party apparatus does not want Sanders to be the nominee, because they feel like he would decimate maybe potentially down ballot candidates, certainly in the Southeast and other areas of the country. And they feel like he does not have a good shot at beating Donald Trump. Of course, in saying that, Hillary wanted Donald Trump in her matchup, and in retrospect, it may have been it may have been the only person that could have beaten Hillary. That's just speculation, of course, but if I think about it, in some ways, that as flawed as Trump was in so many ways, he was the perfect storm at that time.
Yep. Yeah, that's true. But even in the 2016 election, wasn't Sanders sort of denied the...
Yes, and that's why there was rule changes, and I don't want to get into the specifics because I don't know the specifics of what the Democrats did, but what they essentially did was limit the number of superdelegates in terms of how they decide their nomination, so it has more of a grassroots feel where the voters are actually going to choose. And I don't think the superdelegates come into play until the second round of balloting at the convention, and there really hasn't been any contested convention since the late 60s, early 70s, somewhat Reagan and Ford in 76, but that was ironed out pretty quickly. So, I mean, the idea that you would go into a convention not knowing your nominee is really a thing of the past. And so I do think that Bernie has a good shot, though. I mean, he has a good shot at the nomination. It'll be interesting to see. You had Hillary recently, a few weeks ago, basically coming out and saying that nobody likes Bernie, and she made a couple other comments putting him down. And so it'll be interesting to see how this kind of plays out.
Yeah, well, to me, it seems like this is just his time to shine, just like it was Warren not too long ago, it was Harris a while back, and, Beto even. Guys, remember when Beto actually shined for a little bit, which is crazy, but the only one that has held steady has been Biden, so... I really think he's going to be the nominee.
It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, nothing would really surprise me too much at this point, outside of, maybe Buttigieg. I don't even know how to pronounce his name.
I think it's Buttigieg. Buttigieg.
Anyways, maybe him would surprise me just because, he's a mayor, and I'm not putting down mayors. Certainly Giuliani was a mayor of the biggest city in the U.S., but he's the mayor of South Bend. So I do think you have to take that into consideration somewhat. And he's younger, and his background is different than some of these other candidates. Yang would surprise me just because of
but he sure seems cute.
He's
and
a
fun.
nice guy. He's kind of an internet sensation, but he would certainly surprise me because he's not a player really in Democratic Party politics. But he's got a lot of celebrities on board, and he's raising a lot of money. So
he's just likable.
He's a likable guy. He says nice. He doesn't get into the trash talking. He kind of says nice things about people generally. So he's certainly likable. He says a lot of good things about America. He says a lot of good things about his wife on Twitter and things like that. And so it's hard to hate somebody like that.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that Yang is someone I would
and you get $1,000 a month under his plan.
I'd get that.
And you don't even have to pay taxes
on it. Hang out
it.
With.
So what would you do with your $1,000 a month that you stole from someone else?
I love how you.
Or I guess our grandchildren that we're stealing from our grandchildren.
I would write them thank you notes with the first $10 of it, and then the rest I go on a cruise.
Yeah, we could get milkshakes like
4
times a day at least at PDQ,
and then we could also hire a personal trainer to help us burn off all those milkshakes.
I haven't really. I was not feeling sorry for you when you mentioned the gym because having a 1 and 2 year old, I was like, I don't even know what the gym is anymore right now.
Okay, you know what, Ray? I went to the gym when I had a 2 year
old. Really?
So I'm just saying.
Okay, I had to do a blood test for my doctor today, and I was filling out the paperwork, and my son has the flu, so I was up part of the night with the kids, pretty tired, and I wrote down 2019. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry on the paperwork or something. I goes, my kid has a flu. I was up all night. She's like, that's not an excuse. And I kind of chuckled, think she was being funny, but no, she was being serious.
Come on.
It's a piece of paper. I can easily put 20 over the 9, or 0
That's
over the 9.
not an excuse. Like, no compassion at all.
Yeah, she kind of snapped at me.
That's very
Isn't that crazy?
classless.
So for those thinking of moving to Raleigh, that's the kind of stuff you have to deal with. So,
but we still are number 2 in the world.
Yeah, that's true.
Move here. Just be prepared to put up with some junk like that.
Yeah.
But so we just released a really cool, and this is just an annual poll that we do. But I always find the findings fascinating because it just gives us some insight into public opinion on school choice. This is a major issue to us at Civitas, and we know it is to a lot of parents, and school choice is an issue that has even swung elections in certain states. And so the Civitas poll on school choice had some really, really good findings as it relates to just where the public is with who they believe should make decisions about education in our state. And so we also did like a subsample of minorities because oftentimes minorities are undersampled in these types of polls. And so we did an oversample of minorities just to really gauge where many of them are at as voters as well. So let's cover a little bit of that, Ray.
Yeah, absolutely. What surprised you? We had a big event, obviously. We had an individual from Ed Choice, and we had a panel of lawmakers in North Carolina to discuss school choice. Also, 2 parents, 2 minority parents that have been impacted by the ESA scholarships and other school choice programs in the state. But what kind of surprised you from this poll? Was there anything that stood out? Because obviously we did a poll back in January of last year, I think, that was heavily in favor of school choice. I think it was even a little higher than this one. And so, there was the sample size may have been a little bit different, or some of the sampling statewide may have been a little bit different. But obviously school choice support is is still so high. So was there anything that kind of jumped out to you in this poll?
Well, something that I decided to focus in on the press release was the differences between Republicans and Democrats and where they land on school choice, and then also the places where they have common ground. And so some of those things, some of those findings I found particularly interesting. For example, Republicans were 4 times more likely to send their child to a religious or parochial school than Democrats. Now, those percentages are still relatively small. 12% of the Republicans sent their kids to a private school, religious one, and 3% of Democrats. Another reason that when it comes to opposing school choice, so we asked respondents, what's a top reason for supporting school choice, as well as what's a top reason, despite your opinion on school choice, what's the top reason for opposing it? And so the top reason that Republicans gave for opposing school choice was that it hurts public schools financially. But the Democrats, their top reason for opposing school choice was it encourages de facto segregation. And so I thought that really encapsulated these differences between Republicans and Democrats just in how they look at the world, including education policy. The Democrats were concerned about segregation. Yet, most minority parents, actually more minority parents than white parents, support school choice. So I think that's something worth digging into.
Right. And I think, if you look at sort of the crisis kind of in education, I think why I think you need to be concerned about efforts to segregate. I don't think that that's a primary problem when it comes to education, when it comes to learning. I don't think segregation is something that is a roadblock to speak to us sort of achieving these kind of outcomes, educational outcomes that we need. You know what I mean?
I wonder, though, on segregation, when it comes to traditional public schools, district schools that are in primarily minority areas that are lower income, that is a form of segregation by restricting a child
I think
to that particular school.
That's an argument for school choice in terms of, if you have a sort of, let's say, an inner city poor black area, they're stuck in schools. I mean, that's the truth of the matter, that they're stuck in a certain public school and they don't have resources. They don't have a way to get out of that. And that's really the argument for school choice. And I think there's no doubt about that because there is a segregation. You had a sort of de facto segregation in the sense that you did have white flight in the 70s and before to leave a lot of these inner city areas that were becoming depressed, were becoming crime-ridden to some degree. And so I think that this is the big argument for school choice that I think needs to be expounded on endlessly, is that there needs to be an escape hatch. There needs to be a way out for families and children that need different resources than the ones that are being offered.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you're going to talk about segregation, that's probably the more egregious example of it.
Yeah, I think so, because it does tie people down. While I don't think the intent is to segregate in that situation,
right.
It does tie people down to a system where there's just not integration. There's not a diversity of backgrounds per se, or a diversity of interests. And you can say the same thing to some degree, where people choose to pay super high property taxes and live in a lily white area in some areas of the country. It's not all areas of the country, but in some areas of the country, it's that way. And it does promote sort of a people not understanding of each other, or just sort of a de facto segregation from the public school model. And that's not good either. And I don't think, what I was trying to say earlier is, I don't think that concern. I mean, I think any concern over segregation is valid. I don't think by implementing school choice, and from my understanding, not an expert in this area, I don't think the studies are conclusive one way or the other overall. But I don't think the fears of segregation should ever stop creating more choice in education, because I think a lot of that stuff is going to work itself out. And I think we also live in an era where, let's be honest, I mean, if there is, I think, institutionalized racism or elements of racism, I think a lot of it's dying off. And I just look at the younger generations, it's just not something that, while I think there is an element that creates, hyperbolic victim mentality, I just don't see racism like I used to see when I was a lot younger with an older generation.
Yeah, it's definitely evolving. The experiences that,
and that's a good thing,
my kids have, the experiences my kids have had with racism have been, well, actually one of them was at the hands of a little kid like them. Yeah. But then another was like an older person, same with my husband. But I think that this generation, Gen Z particularly, is so racially diverse that, it's becoming something that, the racists they just can't avoid it anyways. They're going to just have to suck it up. And they're becoming the minority.
We are becoming just such a hodgepodge and melting pot to such a greater degree that I think it's just not. It's just something that's going to, racism will never die out, because we all have original sin, and there's an inherent nature to us all that has negative impacts. But it's just something that is just not as big as it once was, and so I think that's obviously a good thing. And I just don't think that sort of this fear of maybe an unknown with school choice, or people fleeing public schools, is going to make that worsen that, or make it in a way that is really worth worrying about.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so let's talk about some of the minority opinions on school choice that we found in the survey. And of those surveyed, 84% of minority families and voters said that they agreed with the statement, parents should have the ability to choose where their child attends school. The other choice that they were given was government or other or unsure. Yeah. And 84%, that's even more than the general population. And so to me, that's a clear indication of where many minorities believe the power really needs to rest on this, and that's in the hands of parents. Over 3/4, 78%, favor the Opportunity Scholarship Program. And this is something that Governor Cooper has come out swinging against. He's tried to defund it. And the Opportunity Scholarship Program, it gives you a $4,200 voucher as a parent if they meet certain income baselines, or they don't go over certain incomes, and that helps offset the cost of private school tuition. So 78% of minorities favor this, and then 63% favor charter schools.
Yeah, it's a way to create equity. I mean, that's really, we talk about fairness and equality a lot in politics today, but we're not willing, in many respects, to implement it in our educational system. And here in North Carolina, we have elements of it. And I think, minorities particularly recognize this as a way to create some equity in society, because education's the great emancipator, in terms of being able to excel and flourish in life. And so I think that this is obviously a good sign, and I think it'll continue. I mean, we've seen this from a political perspective in states like Florida, where you had a black candidate who was very liberal, Democrat, who I think lost close to 15 to 20% of the black female vote because of his position on school choice. And Ron DeSantis, the Republican, ended up winning. So you're seeing some shifts from a political perspective happen quick on this issue. Mm-hmm. And hopefully it's something, I think, that, happens in North Carolina, in the sense that I hope mostly that politicians will be more accountable to the voters. And so that's
absolutely,
that's something that there's this huge disconnect still on school choice and the way people are voting in the legislature and the popularity in the state. And that was explained yesterday very well at our event.
Yep, I agree. So on that note, there's one last stat here. Among the minority oversample, we found that 78% say that they are more likely to support a candidate who supports school choice programs. And so that really reaffirms what you just said right there. And so we are excited about what 2020 holds when it comes to school choice and advancing it, as well as improving our traditional public schools and making sure that the teachers are paid what they're worth and that students are accessing quality education there as well. So stay tuned to that. But you guys, our early bird tickets for our Conservative Leadership Conference, the early bird pricing ends on February 3rd. So we hope that if you are listening to this the day the podcast comes out, you run over to civitasclc.org and purchase your ticket, because you want it at a discounted rate. You like to save money, so make sure you go ahead and go to civitasclc.org, and we will talk to you guys later next week.
Yep. Have a good week.